Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C, and we're talking real talk sports. And today is beautiful April the 22nd, 2016. We know we all have heavy hearts from the loss of one of the greatest artists in the history of the world, and that's the great Prince. So we want to thank our Latin American audience for tuning in. Thank you for all your tweets coming in from England as well as Germany and Canada, and for everyone who's expressed how they feel about the great Prince. We were very sad yesterday, and still a lot of sadness today too, Big C. But I think when you listen to his music, man, Prince won't let you stay sad too long. What are your thoughts on Prince, Big C, and how, even though it's a sad occasion, people are starting to party and remember how great he was, Big C?
Well, you know, that's the greatest thing about what he gave to the world, Charlton. He gave the world joy. He gave the world inspiration in his music.
Yeah.
You know, I was driving today, and a song that came on that I hadn't heard in a while, but it was like, let's go crazy, let's get nuts. When that song came on, I remember when it came out, I mean, everybody stood up, nobody sit down.
Yeah.
You know, that's how inventive his music was, how inspiring his music was. You just go across the gamut and listen to what he's saying. It wasn't just the beats, but it was the words to his songs.
Yeah.
And Prince celebrated everybody. He was a philanthropist, but, you know, the thing about it, Charlton, he didn't want to be known by that.
Yeah.
You know, the charitable organizations and contributions that he made over the decades, it was under the radar because that's what type of person he was. He was private. He was private as a man, and he felt his actions did not need to be known because he was well enough known as an artist.
Yeah.
He didn't need a reward for what he did from his heart.
Yeah.
And that was to give to those who were less fortunate over the years. And he did that for many years, Charlton. And those are the things that great people do. You know, people who need a pat on the back, we have enough of those in the world that say, hey, I donate to this, I donate to that.
Yeah, he didn't tell anyone.
He was the person who spoke with his heart and his mind, not with his mouth about what he needed to do to help others.
Well, there's a gentleman by the name of Van Jones that was talking about how he contributed to solar heating panels in Oakland. And speaking of solar heating panels, this segment is also sponsored by a Bud Light. Some of you say it tastes great. Others say it's less filling. Big C, you good old boys down in the South, which one is it?
Hey, Charlton, I got to drink 2 of those, okay? 2 at a time to fill it.
Okay, I understand. And so when you think about, as sad as I was yesterday, and most of the radio stations around the country, they're playing Prince, tribute to Prince, most of the news stations. And of course, after the shock is over, I know Spike Lee had a big gathering last night in New York City, and people just came out. People from all over the world, people of all different ethnic groups, young and old, entertainers, just so much history of people saying how much they were inspired by the great Prince. And that's what we talk about on Charlton and Big C Sports. Who inspires you in life? What can we all do to be an inspiration to someone so that we can help them make their dreams come true the same way Prince did, Big C?
Well, Prince, you know, Charlton, when you talk about an individual being an individual, many people know the problems he had with Sony Records some years ago where he would not perform. He changed his name to the artist formerly known as. He used the symbol instead of utilizing his name. That ended up in a nasty lawsuit, but he was eventually able to go back and buy his music back from Sony. He wanted to own what was his, what he created, because it was not him without him owning it. So he cut a deal with Sony, and this is what Chris Rock talked about during the Oscars, going out and creating your own. He had that creativity. Artists like Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, who owned their own product, who went out and created a record label because they wanted to control what they were doing. And that's what Prince did, Charlton. He went back, did that. You know, there's thousands of songs that he has written and produced that will probably be released over the years, and they would never run out of time releasing his songs because they're so resonating in whatever era that you release them in. But, you know, when we talk about sports and we talk about entertainment, you have to look no further than the 2007 halftime performance at the Super Bowl.
Oh, that was amazing.
That Prince put on in Miami. And it has to be one of the top 2 halftime performances of all time, Charlton. It shut the place down. You know, Prince he was so electrifying. The game was secondary. And when you talk about a Super Bowl, the performance being secondary to the halftime performance, this truly was. This man, this artist, was just excellent personified that night, Charlton, in Miami.
Well, see, and that was also done in a rainstorm, too, but it didn't stop him. How a lot of musicians say the show must go on, and that's what Prince, not only did he make it go on, but people are saying it's one of the best performances in the history of the Super Bowl. We know how great Whitney Houston's performance was down in Tampa. Also, a lot of people loved how Beyonce performed when they had the Super Bowl down in New Orleans when the 49ers played the Baltimore Ravens. But I think something too, Big C, that you were talking about something yesterday, how you had met the great Prince and how he was so gracious. He wasn't the kind of a person that had an ego toward people. However, he was in control of what he did. He was in control of his work. And a lot of people understand that he was driven. And so one of the things I want to get from you, and speaking of driven, this segment is also being sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Escalade. You can only get it there new, the new standard of the world. And when you go down and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. So, Big C, when you think about some of the things that people say about he was kind of an introvert and kind of quiet and didn't want to talk a lot, Big C, but he also had control of his music. Where does that discipline come from? A lot of athletes have that too, Big C. This doesn't mean they're standoffish. It just means they're focused, Big C.
He was not an introvert, Charlton. As you just spoke about, he was a very focused man. He had a purpose and a thought process that he dealt with on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And when you met him in person, it wasn't that, you wanted to be all giddy around him. He gauged the people that he interacted with, Charlton. He would look at you, analyze the situation, and know how in depth he needed to be in having a conversation with you. Many people have seen him on interviews such as with Larry King.
Yeah.
They've seen him on a few talk shows. And if you go back to when he first hit the scene in 1977 on American Bandstand, he was a very shy and reserved young man when Dick Clark was trying to interview him, Charlton, in his first television appearance. It wasn't that he wanted to be this highly vocal person. His genre was his music and entertaining.
Yeah.
He wasn't on television to give interviews about himself. Interviews about Prince were about his music.
Yeah.
What he resonated to other people. And so when people looked at him and said he was controversial and different, he wasn't. He was a man
just focused.
As a man, Charlton.
Yeah,
he was
focused.
himself. He was not that individual that other people wanted to be, but he self-promoted what he wanted to portray.
Yeah.
And that was him as the individual, not the public persona, Charlton.
Well, when you think about that, I remember some of the newscasters, and Wolf Blitzer, he was saying how it was a shock to him, and he's interviewed some of everyone, heads of states, presidents, name it, he's interviewed them, and he was just lamenting how they painted the CNN stage purple. It was all lit up in purple. I think a lot of the state houses, the state capitals, all over the country are lit up in purple. And he's one of the biggest fans of the Purple People Eaters, the Minnesota Vikings. And when I hear some of the people that are in their 70s saying how they used to dance to Prince 30 years ago, whether it was if I was your girlfriend or Little Red Corvette, I wish you heaven. This is what it sounds like when doves cry.
Charlton, his music exuded energy.
Yeah.
Your body could not be still when you heard a Prince song.
Yeah.
And there's no one working in media today, Charlton. I don't care whether you're working on a news broadcast, a sports broadcast, a radio show, a television show. Everyone in media today has been affected by Prince's music.
Yeah.
Everyone has listened to it. Everyone has enjoyed it. Even the people years ago that say, hey, this stuff is over the top. I can't listen to this.
Right.
They shouldn't play this on the radio. They all appreciated it when they behind closed doors, Charlton.
Oh, yeah.
So, Prince affected everybody. There's nobody in media right now that cannot be affected by the loss of Prince.
Yeah.
Or nor can anybody not appreciate what he's left behind for us, Charlton.
Yeah, and see, that's one of the great things because he wrote a lot of music for other artists too, Big C, that I didn't even know about, from country music to classical music, from hip-hop, R&B.
As I said last night, Charlton, in 1985,
yeah,
Prince had a #1 hit on 7 Billboard charts at the same time. In the same year, 7 bill. So that's country western, that's rock, that's jazz, that's R&B, that's hip hop. He had them all, Charlton.
Yeah.
In 1 year, no artist ever in the history of the world has done that. But Prince did that in 1985.
Yeah.
7 #1 hits on different charts.
That's incredible.
Unfathomable.
That's when I think about that too, Big C. And you talked about some of the times that you had met Prince. I listened to Shaquille O'Neal last night, along with a lot of other athletes. Kenny the Jet Smith, Charles Barkley. I think they're great to listen to. They're funny. They're not so stuck in the mud about who scored how many points, etc. But Shaquille O'Neal mentioned something that a lot of people, they would be invited back to Prince's mansion and hang out and party with him just to relax and have a good time. And he would perform whether you're in front of 10 people or 10,000 or 50,000 people. He was always performing. I remember he came to the LA Coliseum and performed. And there were so many people that still talk about how great that performance was, even back then, Big C.
Well, you know, Charlton, when you walked around Prince, now he was the slightest of stature of men, at only 5'4" in actual height.
Yeah.
And you spoke about Shaquille being around Prince. He is Shaquille almost 2 feet taller than Prince.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee you when Shaq was there, Shaq felt small, as we all did. I know when I met the man, I'm looking at him, you know, very diminutive, but I'm like, this is just a huge man.
Yeah.
You know, because I was in total awe. And here it was, you know, I'm a foot taller than him, probably outweighed him by 150 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm looking at him, and it's like, God, you know, this is a giant.
Yeah.
This is a giant of a man, intelligence-wise, artistic-wise, and just his public persona in total. And you felt an honor. You were in royalty, and his name fit him, Prince.
Yeah.
It was being around royalty in the industry, Charlton. And when you spoke about the other athletes being around him and all the entertainers across the world and broadcasters who have paid homage to that man, that is because of the respect that we all held for him, Charlton.
Yeah, and see, that's incredible. And speaking of respect, this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California BMW dealer, home of the ultimate driving machine. And when you go down and test drive it, make sure you test drive the all-new 600 horsepower M7. And when you're test driving it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. So Big C, when we think about some of the things too, and we'll get into the sports aspect of it, but you brought up something about the Super Bowl and how when he was partying down in Florida and he put on a great performance. Now, athletes play whether it's rain or not, you know, especially you good old boys down south. It's always raining on you guys, even when it's 100 degrees in California.
What's a little liquid sunshine, Charlton?
Liquid sunshine. But I heard one of the guys on TV, one of the great athletes, saying how they always have music in the locker rooms. And see, in a lot of professional football and basketball and baseball locker rooms, you have different cultures. And people have different, whether it's hard rock, heavy metal, hip-hop, or some rap. But no one ever complained about Prince because everyone had some Prince. You could have some Motley Crue, you could have some Tupac, you could have some Beethoven or a Pavarotti, but everybody understood Prince. And that was one of the things that I think he was so brilliant, Big C, as an entertainer because he galvanized so many people, Big C.
Well, Charlton, I think because of his guitar virtuosoism that he had, he was one of the world's most profound lead guitar players. And I go back to when he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And he played a George Harrison song where, you know, it was just unbelievable, the rips that he had on his guitar, Charlton. It was just, you sit back, you lean back in your chair, and you just felt your whole body being taken over by Prince playing it. And I remember when I saw him in concert the first time in 1984, and I'm sitting there in Purple Rain. You know, it was just 84, 85, I think it was.
Yeah.
I'm old. I keep telling you about this CD. I got to go get it checked
Don't worry,
out,
the
man.
NFL has a settlement for guys like you.
I think I need another Bud Light or something to level me out.
You can never have too many Bud Lights, Big C.
But, you know, we were sitting in the front row. I was fortunate enough to be that close to him. This is the first time I ever had any interaction with him, and we got backstage.
Yeah.
But, you know, you sit there, and this was Prince and the Revolution and the Purple Rain tour. Yeah. And the powerfulness of the as well as the loudness, because my ears rang for the next 2 days.
That's true.
I couldn't even hear plays called in the huddle. You know, at practice. Texas.
That's funny.
But, to watch this man play, and he wore all white in that concert, and the piano he had, the baby grand was white and all of that, and three of his guitars were all white, but he was just so powerful.
Yeah.
And you could see him interact with the audience. He felt it. He smiled during his shows. He was excited. He was giddy. He talked. That was the man, the persona of the man, is that he loved what he was doing. He got true joy out of performing for others, Charlton.
Well, see, I was listening to Spike Lee talk. He was on CNN. I stayed up late last night. Just seeing Aretha Franklin, she paid homage. She said she didn't know him all that well, but she respected everything about him. Mrs. Jackson,
one of his best friends, Charlton, in the entertainment industry was Patti LaBelle.
Yeah.
Patti LaBelle and Prince, he called her mom. Mm-hmm. That's how close they were.
Yeah.
She loved him and he loved her.
Well, I tell you what, when I look at him, and one of the analysts was asking about why didn't Prince and Michael Jackson ever perform? Because we know that Prince performed sometimes on stage with Stevie Wonder, and he was very appreciative and respected Stevie Wonder so much, and vice versa. But these two great icons performed, but we never had the chance to hear Prince and Michael Jackson, two of the greatest musicians, entertainers in the history of the world. I want to ask you the same question that was posed to someone, and maybe it's not even a fair question. If both Prince and Michael Jackson were holding a concert at the same time in the prime of their careers, and you can only go to one, which one would you go to? And that's something that you have to think, man, that's not even fair to ask that question. But does that make sense, Big C? I mean, how people were so great, but you're torn between which two to go see?
Charlton, it was, and that's how they were as competing artists. They weren't enemies; they were competing artists.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the powerful magnetism that they both possess, and that question that you just asked is like the ultimate question.
Yeah.
You got a ticket for both. Who do you go see?
Yeah.
Or do you go see the first half of one and the second half of the other? I mean, it's that cup's half empty or is it half full?
Well, yeah.
That's where you are. I mean, neither one of the shows you want to miss, but how do you make that decision?
Well, I think it's just as provocative as saying USC is playing Alabama. You got money on the line. Which team do you bet on? We all know you put your money on USC.
Roll Tide, we will send you a case of Charmin, all right? Not a problem.
I think when you're good old boys, the reason you guys win so many football games down in the SEC is because you're always just Southern hospitality. So when you offer people a cup of something to drink, they think they're drinking water, but you guys get it laced with moonshine. So by the time they have a cup,
down in the South, everybody gets so excited about the barbecue and don't know how to back off from it. And so if you're feeling a little sluggish pregame, you shouldn't eat so much. Now that moonshine might relax you. Don't worry about that. If you go to sleep, we're going to run all over you anyway.
Well, I understand that. The moonshine definitely is something that people love. And when you get into it, you got to understand that it's a good way to party. But again, with Prince, and I'm so appreciative of the fact that one of the commentators said on the news, Big C, what a great time to follow entertainment. Because we've had Elvis, we've had Rick Barry, we had the hardest working man in show business, James Brown. But Spike Lee said actually he thinks it would be Prince now because this guy performed all the time. So everybody loves this great music. But let me ask you this question, because we always tie this into these guys earn their money. He was very wealthy because he got paid for his talent. If we talked about college football and how we want to make sure that this show is about creating opportunities for people, Prince was also trying to create, quote unquote, the Black Silicon Valley in Baltimore, because we talked about colleges going in to recruit young African American kids and white kids too, but predominantly African American. He's talking about how to get people to understand the stock market, how to understand how you can become the next Silicon Valley, because you don't have to bench press 400 pounds to do that. You don't have to run a 4.40 to do that, Big C. Not only was he philanthropic, he was very industrial, Big C, with his talent and his money, his philanthropy, Big C.
Well, when you think about the money he invested in inner cities, we had a lot of stripes over the past couple of years with the young African American being killed. Prince helped out Freddie Gray's family in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. He helped out Trayvon Martin's family in Baltimore, Eric Garner's family in New York. Financially, he put money into these families
Yeah.
to help them out during their hard times. But people didn't know about that, nor did Prince want people to know about that. Prince was a very compassionate man, Charlton,
Yeah.
and that's when people talk about how controversial he was, because he didn't let people inside his inner circle, nor should anybody have to.
Yeah.
When you turn on CNN, who on CNN lets people inside their inner circle? It's not like Larry King is hosting a show in his house.
Right.
It's not like Don Lemon is hosting a show in his house, nor on CBS or NBC, Charlton.
Yeah.
None of these people have said, hey, get inside my inner circle and know all of my workings. But because they thought that they owned Prince, Prince was a self-owned man.
Yeah.
So that he did not have to inform the world of everything that he was doing. He didn't have to pull an Oprah Winfrey saying, hey, I'm opening up a girls' school in Africa,
Yeah.
even though I could do it here in the U.S. and benefit some young ladies here. I'm going to do it in Africa, because maybe I'll get a little more world notoriety.
Well, see,
Prince took care of
he
home,
just did
Charlton.
it. Yeah, he just did it. I want to ask you this question, too, Big C, because we all know he was a big sports fan. This is Charlton Big C Sports every Monday through Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time worldwide. We know he's a great Viking fan, and we talk about these quarterbacks that are up for the draft. And
They got quarterbacks up for the draft?
yeah, they tell us like every 10 seconds.
Somebody wake me up, because I didn't think they had anyone that was viable to even start on the team, yet less known on the college team.
Well, you know, the great Prince, he loved the Vikings, right? A lot of people love the Vikings, a great team, the Purple People Eaters. But he got the chance to see the great Fran Tarkenton take the Vikings to 4 Super Bowls. Also saw the great Ronald Cunningham take him to the NFC Championship game. Saw the great Chuck Foreman, the running back. Carl Eller, a lot of great people. Alan Page, so many great Minnesota Vikings. And what would you think would be a team that he would enjoy more? The team that we just mentioned, or Teddy Bridgewater and Adrian Peterson? Which ones would maybe stand out more to him, Big C? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I look at this, Charlton, because he's been a season ticket holder in Minneapolis for a few decades now. You know, he was a fan of the Vikings, and the Vikings were a fan of his, Charlton.
Yeah.
He would be in awe being around the players. He had access to the locker room on a few occasions. And so when he walked in, he was like a kid in the candy store, even though he wasn't much bigger than a kid.
Yeah.
But, everybody in the locker room, these hawking men, were in awe of this diminutive man walking in the locker room. All they wanted to do was be in the presence of Prince, take the selfies with him, asking him for his autographs as well as he was asking them for their autographs. Wearing a team jersey, to live the life that Prince lived, to be a great sports fan, to be an ambassador for your country around the world, Charlton.
Yeah.
You just have to praise the life that he has and celebrate it now that it's gone. He celebrated while he was alive. But when you talk about the gamut of Minnesota Viking players that he's had an opportunity to interact with, the 4 Super Bowls that the Vikings went through.
Yeah.
They've built a team up. They were coming back. He's been around Adrian Peterson over the past few years, and the young Teddy Bridgewater, quarterback that you talk about. His life was fulfilling at all points. Unfortunately, it ended rapidly, but his life was fulfilling in every way, whether it was music, whether it was sports, Charlton. He didn't have a dull moment in his life.
Well, see, and I think that's important, too, because as we get on the next segment about Prince, this segment is also sponsored by your Northern California Ford dealers, home of the all-new F-150. They build it Ford tough, and when you go down and test drive it, tell them that Charlton and Big C sent you. And Big C, in the final segment of the program, and I know you mentioned some of those great players, and you talk about how Minnesota, they played out in the cold. I think one of the colder games they played it against the Cowboys. I remember Drew Pearson. Also, they went to the the new stadium that's old now. It's only about 20 years old, but that deploted. They're opening up a new state-of-the-art stadium. I don't know if it's this season or not. I think they have one more year at the University of Minnesota.
Yeah, one more year outside. They'll open up the stadium in 2017.
But Prince, with his studio that he had, I didn't even know this because as a philanthropist, and I think we touched on it somewhat, Big C, there's so many people that are about the III, and they want everyone to know what they did. And we know that a lot of people exist. He did a lot for communities of color. He did a lot for poor white kids as well. He wasn't so much just pigeonholed into what he was. Was he black or white? Was he straight or gay? Didn't matter to him. He's human and he's brilliant. So what can you learn? What can we say to these young kids that are trying to get drafted into the NFL? We know that draft is coming up. They want to make millions overnight. What can they learn from the Prince in your perspective? Let me ask you this question. What did you learn from him about philanthropy? I know you've been very helpful to a lot of people in your lifetime, Big C.
Well, what you can learn and look at Prince's life on is how he was innovative, Charlton.
Yeah.
Is that he had a path and a purpose that he wanted to follow. And that's what he did. He wasn't deterred from his thoughts, from his creativity.
Yeah.
He listened to everybody, whether you praised him or appalled him. He listened.
Yeah.
But he took what others said, Charlton, and made it one strong purpose for himself, as well as what he resonated to others.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do. It's like when you talk about these young men coming out in the draft. Everybody's telling them they're the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
When the sun comes up, it's going to shine on their butt.
Right.
All right?
Right.
Now, and we've talked about it on many occasions, everybody's replaceable in sports, okay?
Yeah.
Prince was not replaceable. But everybody in sports is replaceable because you can't look back and find me another player in the NFL that's been there for 20 years. They don't exist.
Yeah.
They don't exist anymore. The last quarterback, Charlton, to play 20 years in the NFL, many people may not remember who he is. That's Vince Evans. Vince Evans is the last quarterback to play 20 years in the NFL, and he was a black quarterback, Charlton.
That's incredible.
Drafted by the Chicago Bears back in 1977. He ended his career with the Raiders back in 97, 20-year span as an NFL quarterback. Now, that's unheard of. And so when you talk about these young quarterbacks coming out of the draft, Charlton, they'll be lucky to get 7 years.
Yeah.
Top 2 quarterbacks that they're talking about?
Yeah.
If their careers go 7 years, they'll be very fortunate. But we talk about, quarterbacks, the prototypical quarterback, what people are looking for.
Yeah.
Vince Evans proved that, I may not have been a prototypical quarterback, but I lasted 20 years in the NFL.
20 years, and that's a lot of work because Prince started performing even before he was 17, but you're talking about 40 years being on top of an industry where a lot of times he had to kind of make his way in because some people said he was more controversial than Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson was more mainstream and less to offend anyone with his words, less provocative. But Prince kind of put you on the edge of your seat, so that made it even more challenging for him. So Big C,
Charlton, he didn't change. In his 40 years in the industry, he did not change. You can look at him a year ago.
Yeah.
And you can look at him 39 years ago. There was really no difference in his body movement, his interaction with the fan, his energy on stage.
Yeah.
Prince was Prince. He brought it every performance, Charlton. He knew that he had an obligation to his fan base, to the world, to be consistent. And he only wanted to be consistently good, Charlton, not consistently mediocre. I'm having a bad night, we'll just cut this off. I remember a concert years ago, Charlton, that I was at.
Yeah.
Prince came out and started playing, and the crowd was lukewarm.
Uh-huh.
And he told them, you guys are not ready for me.
Yeah.
He put his guitar down, walked off the stage. He was gone about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
He came back out. He said, are you guys ready now? Got a mediocre reception. Went back again for another 10, 15 minutes. Came back out. He said, all right, let's kick this so-and-so off.
Yep.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
And the crowd stood up like they were, school kids all of a sudden.
Well, I think
and the concert went on for 2 hours.
Yeah.
2 hours, Charlton. Now, he put it on hold for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But then he came out and played for 2 hours. What artist would come out and play for 2 hours?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Well, I think sometimes when you think about, I remember seeing Prince perform out in San Jose, California. Back in 1997, and I saw him 2 more times. Once in Oakland, and then the other time in San Francisco. But I think sometimes when people get out to the South and they're having a concert, they got to remember that people are so low. They're so baked on moonshine, they may not be able to party right away. So I think that's why he wrote "Party."
We're gonna send you a bottle, Charlton. Are you old enough to drink? We gotta find that out.
Yeah, I think I might be by tomorrow.
I can't be contributing to the delinquency of a minor, so I'm gonna have to get your ID and check you out.
I understand. So, and think of that. So, Big C, as we close, and I want to say this final segment is sponsored by Cynthia Evans at CYNN Entertainment, and also Beneath His Wings Foundation. To support or donate, go to bhwf.org, and that's Cynthia Evans, and she's the CYNN Entertainment. If you're looking to promote anything in Northern California, she's the best in the business. Big C, how would you like to wrap up our tribute to the great Prince And on a happy note, we know that everybody can be inspired by something. If you can take what he's done in his own life and use it as an inspiration in all of our lives, in the final minute, Big C, what would you say he did to inspire more people, Big C?
Well, I think just appreciating and respecting others, Charlton, is what he did more than anything else.
Yeah.
He appreciated everybody that he was around. He respected the opportunity he had in life. He didn't grow up in a pristine family situation as a young man, but he took what he had in that involvement with his parents, as you spoke about being musicians. He learned from his environment, Charlton, and he took what he learned and he expanded upon it. He didn't take it and say, okay, because this is happening in my life, I got to be this type of person.
Right.
I got to take a step up above the environment that I'm in and make it better for me and those around me. And he did that, Charlton. And that's what everybody in life has to do. People will say, well, I come from an oppressed situation and I didn't have the opportunity that others had. Every young man and woman has an opportunity in life, Charlton, and it starts with education.
Yeah.
Education. Prince educated everyone around him.
Yeah.
Being around Prince was an education, Charlton, and that's what I take from this, and that's what every young man and woman in America should take. The opportunity to get that education. Start early, in grammar school, high school, if you go to college, do it. But make sure you optimize your opportunity for education. You have an opportunity for success in life in whatever field you choose, Charlton.
Well, I also want to say condolences to Prince and his family. My heart goes out to him. But I'm so inspired because he was a great performer. Not only a great performer, but a great person. So we're going to honor him the same way people did at his concerts. I'm going to tell you that we are also out of time. But I want to tell you Prince meant so much to me as an entertainer and as a man. And we'll bring you more every Monday through Friday on Charlton and Big C Sports Worldwide. The same way Prince inspired, we hope you can inspire someone to go out and do something that makes you happy. Go out and have real talk. Discuss things that are important to you in life and make a difference in the world. So we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope you have a super fantastic day.